Sylvia was 74 and had lived a quiet, graceful life. A retired piano teacher, she still wore perfume on Sundays and never missed her afternoon walks. Her house was filled with music even after her students had long gone. Mozart, Debussy, the occasional Chopin drifting through her living room like soft memories. But over the last few months, something had started to change. It was small at first, barely noticeable. Just a single night of waking up at 2 a.m., then again around 4, then one more trip before sunrise. She brushed it off, blaming the evening tea or a colder room. But the nights kept repeating themselves, and the exhaustion slowly crept into her days. One morning, Sylvia stood in her kitchen, staring blankly at the kettle, unable to remember why she'd walked in. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her favorite cup. That's when she caught her reflection in the glass door, tired eyes, a pale face, and the quiet realization that something wasn't right. Her energy was slipping away, not from illness, but from a sleep so broken, so scattered, it left her feeling like a ghost of herself. She skipped her walk that morning. Later, she canceled her lunch with her old friend Martha, too tired to pretend everything was fine. That night, as she sat on the edge of her bed, eyes blurry with fatigue, Sylvia whispered to herself, "Why can't I sleep like I used to?" The real shift came a week later when she lost her balance walking to the bathroom in the dark. No fall, thank God, just a scare, but it was enough. The next day, she made an appointment with her doctor, something she hadn't done in months. After listening carefully, the urologist looked her in the eye and said something she'd never expected to hear. "Sylvia, it's not just about how much water you drink, it's when and what you drink with it. Your bladder isn't the villain here. Your routine might be." That simple idea unraveled everything she thought she knew. She'd been doing what she believed was right, staying hydrated, sipping tea before bed to calm herself, avoiding salt like every health magazine told her. But none of it worked. She still woke up night after night, shuffling to the bathroom with a heart that pounded just a little harder each time. The doctor explained how, as we age, our kidneys slow down at night, our legs swell more easily, and our brains cling to old sleep patterns like habits worn into the soul. It wasn't about pills, it wasn't even about age, it was about rhythm, balance, timing. That day, Sylvia went home and made a promise to herself. She would try something new, not radical, not exhausting, just a quiet shift. She drank more water in the morning, started adding a pinch of sea salt to her breakfast glass. She propped up her legs before dinner, switched her bedtime tea to chamomile, and gave herself permission to wait, just 5 minutes, when she woke at 2 a.m. to see if the urge would pass. Some nights it didn't, but slowly the 2 a.m. trip became 4 amousse, then 5 quarts. Then some nights it didn't come at all. Now Sylvia wakes to sunlight, not her bladder. She feels her energy returning like a soft melody in her chest. The mornings are hers again, music, walks, coffee with friends. The world hasn't changed, but she has. And all it took was listening to her body a little more closely and giving it the kindness of new habits shaped by understanding. Because sleep, real sleep, isn't a luxury, it's a quiet kind of strength. And it's never too late to get it back. Sylvia had always prided herself on being independent. Even in her 70s, she handled her errands with grace, paid her bills on time, and cooked small, nutritious meals in the same kitchen she had danced around with her late husband years ago. She was the kind of woman who would quietly straighten a picture frame while waiting for the kettle to whistle. But lately, her nights felt like a betrayal. She could no longer sleep for more than 2 or 3 hours at a time. Just as her body began to drift into rest, it would rouse her, an urgent nudge from her bladder, sending her stumbling through the hallway in darkness. It had started subtly, like a whisper in her body. At first, it was just once a night, then twice, then every 2 hours, like clockwork. She began to dread bedtime. Not for the sleep, but for the endless cycle of waking, walking, peeing, trying to sleep again, and failing. Her dreams grew short and unfinished. Her mornings lost their shine. The house grew quieter than it had ever been. Not peaceful, just tired. One night, around 3 a.m., Sylvia sat on the closed lid of the toilet, her robe hanging loosely from her shoulders, her legs chilled by the cold tile. She stared at the nightlight and whispered, "What's happening to me?" She wasn't in pain, she wasn't sick, but she was exhausted, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. She didn't tell anyone. Not her daughter, who called once a week. Not the neighbor who waved to her each morning. There's a kind of embarrassment that comes with these little breakdowns of the body, a shame that no one warns you about. The following morning, she forced herself into the clinic. Her usual doctor, Dr. Hess, was gentle and calm, with eyes that never rushed her words. After listening carefully, he asked her a question that seemed too simple. "Sylvia, when are you drinking most of your water?" She blinked. "In the evenings, mostly, after dinner. I don't want to get dehydrated." He smiled kindly, then explained how aging kidneys slow down as the sun sets, how water late in the day has nowhere to go but into the bladder, and how most seniors unknowingly sabotage their sleep trying to stay healthy. That moment was the first time Sylvia had heard the phrase front-loading hydration. Dr. Hess explained it gently, like he was talking to someone he cared about. If she simply drank more water in the morning and early afternoon, at least 70% of her daily intake before 3 p.m., her body would have time to process it before bedtime. "We don't store hydration like savings in a bank," he said. "It flows through us, and your body works better with rhythm, not rush." Sylvia went home and sat by the window, a glass of water in her hand at 10 a.m. for the first time in years. The sun felt warmer than usual. She watched the street and thought of all the nights she had blamed her bladder, her body, even her age, never realizing her habit was the quiet culprit. It was such a small change. 1 glass earlier in the day, then 2, then 3. She started marking a little tick on the side of her notebook with each cup. The first few nights didn't change much, but she noticed something else. Her daytime energy improved. She felt less dizzy when she stood. Her skin didn't feel as dry. It was as if her body had been thirsty for this rhythm all along. That week, she slept 5 hours straight for the first time in months. Not perfect, but better, hopeful. She woke up with sunlight on her pillow instead of moonlight on her floor. And for Sylvia, that small shift, the decision to hydrate early, felt like reclaiming a piece of her old self. Not a dramatic transformation, but the kind that begins quietly and patiently, like a melody returning after a long silence. By the second week, Sylvia had begun to feel proud of herself. Her mornings were more alert, her movements more stable, and there was a lightness in her step she hadn't felt in years. She started taking longer walks again, just to the corner and back, but it was something. Her notebook, once used for piano lesson plans, was now filled with tallies of morning glasses, afternoon sips, and little notes that read like love letters to her own progress. She thought she had solved the problem. The nightly bathroom trips were easing, until they returned, suddenly and without reason. It started again one Wednesday. 3 wake-ups in one night, then 4 the next. Sylvia was confused. She hadn't slipped. She hadn't gone back to drinking water late. She had done everything right. That Friday, she nearly cried from frustration as she folded laundry with bleary eyes and a pounding headache. Something didn't add up. She called Dr. Hess again. This time, he didn't talk about water. He talked about salt. "You're hydrating well now, Sylvia," he said gently, "but your body needs more than just water. It needs the right balance to hold on to it." Sylvia frowned. "But I've been careful. I cut out salt years ago. My blood pressure." "I know," Dr. Hess nodded. "And that was smart back then, but the body isn't a static thing. It adapts, and sometimes it overcorrects." He explained how low sodium levels, a condition called hyponatremia, can happen when someone drinks too much water without enough salt, especially in older adults. Without sodium, the body doesn't know how to hold on to the water, so it flushes it constantly into the bladder and out again all night long. It felt unfair. Sylvia had done what every headline, every doctor on TV, every wellness magazine said: avoid salt, drink more water. But no one told her that too little salt could leave her overhydrated and just as exhausted. Dr. Hess suggested something radical, at least to Sylvia. Just a pinch of natural sea salt in your morning glass. Or, better yet, get your sodium through food. A slice of avocado with a touch of sea salt, bone broth, a few olives. Nothing extreme, just balance. Sylvia went home and stared at her pantry. She still had the tiny jar of sea salt her daughter had brought from Italy years ago. She'd barely touched it. That next morning, she sprinkled the smallest amount into her water, watching it dissolve like a secret being released. It felt strange, almost like breaking a rule, but she trusted her body more now, trusted her doctor more too. A few days later, something shifted. She didn't just sleep longer, she woke up without that dry, papery feeling in her mouth. Her skin looked less dull in the mirror. The heaviness that had returned lifted again. Her body wasn't just being filled, it was finally absorbing. That Sunday, she made bone broth for the first time in years. The smell reminded her of her mother's kitchen in the 1950s, when no one feared a pinch of salt. She felt silly in a way for having villainized something so vital for so long, but mostly she felt grateful. Sylvia began to understand that health in her 70s wasn't about strict rules. It was about wisdom, listening more closely, not to the articles or the fads, but to her own rhythm. Her body had been trying to tell her something, and now it finally had her full attention. The nights were quiet again, not perfect, but less frantic. Sylvia had managed to go from 3 wake-ups to just 1, and sometimes, to her amazement, none at all. She was beginning to feel like herself again, not younger exactly, but steadier, stronger. But then came a night that puzzled her more than any of the rest. She woke at exactly 2:05 a.m., a time that had etched itself into her body like muscle memory. Her eyes blinked open, and before she even thought, her legs had swung off the bed. But something made her pause. Her bladder didn't feel full. There was no real pressure, just a whisper of habit. She sat still on the edge of the mattress, heart beating softly in the dark, and thought, do I actually need to go, or am I just used to going? That morning, Sylvia shared the experience with Dr. Hess during a follow-up call. He chuckled gently. Sylvia, he said, that sounds like your brain playing its old tune. He explained that just like children are trained to wake up when they feel the urge, adults, especially those who wake up often, can develop the same pattern in reverse. It becomes a loop. The body wakes up at a certain time, the brain expects the bladder to signal, and so it does, whether or not the need is real. We call it a trained bladder, he said. It's not that your body is broken, it's that it learned a routine, and it can learn a new one too. The idea struck Sylvia as both frustrating and comforting. Frustrating because she had unknowingly spent months or maybe years obeying a signal that wasn't even urgent. Comforting because now she knew it wasn't just her age or her organs. It was a pattern, and patterns could be reshaped, so she tried something new. The next time she woke at 2 a.m., she didn't immediately get up. She sat quietly, hands resting on her lap, and waited. She gave herself 10 slow, deep breaths. Then she asked herself again, gently, like an old friend, do I really need to go? That night, the answer was no. And so, for the first time in recent memory, she lay back down and drifted off without making the familiar trip down the hallway. Of course, not every night was the same. Sometimes the urge was real, sometimes it wasn't. But Sylvia had learned to listen, to pause, to give her body the benefit of the doubt. Over time, something magical happened. Her brain stopped sounding the alarm at 2 hours. Then it stopped waking her at all. At least not until morning. She hadn't told many people about this new practice. It felt personal, almost sacred. But she shared it with her friend Marcy during their weekly tea. Marcy, who had her own battles with restless nights, leaned in close and whispered, "You mean I don't have to go every time I wake up?" Sylvia smiled and replied, "Sometimes your brain just needs a reminder that it's safe to rest." That's the thing no one had ever told her, that bladders can be retrained just like the mind, that not every signal is a command, that sometimes stillness is the medicine. And in those quiet moments of waiting, Sylvia felt something she hadn't felt in years, not just control, but trust. Trust in her body, trust in her sleep, trust that peace wasn't gone, it had just been interrupted. For most of her life, Sylvia had ended her evenings the same way. A warm cup of herbal tea, soft light on the kitchen counter, and a quiet moment by the window. It was her ritual, her reward for making it through another day. She believed in its comfort, in its quiet magic. It helped her feel calm, grounded, and ready for sleep. That cup was sacred until the day she learned it might have been one of the reasons she couldn't sleep at all. It was during her grocery run on a sunny Tuesday when the realization began. While waiting in line, Sylvia picked up a new box of tea labeled Deep Cleanse Night Blend with hibiscus and dandelion root. Something tugged at her memory. Those words, hibiscus, dandelion, they sounded familiar and not in a good way. When she got home, she pulled out the same box she'd been drinking for months. There they were again, printed clearly in tiny letters. She felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The next day, she brought the box to Dr. Hess. He turned it over, reading the ingredients with a slight sigh. Dandelion root, hibiscus, lemongrass, all natural, all very common in herbal teas, and all diuretics, he said softly. Sylvia blinked. Diuretics? He nodded. They encourage your kidneys to flush out water, even if you don't need them to. They're gentle, but at night, even a gentle push is enough to wake your bladder. Sylvia sat quietly, processing the irony. She had cut out caffeine years ago, switched to natural herbal blends, followed every sleep tip she could find, but no one had told her that even herbal teas, those marketed as relaxing or cleansing, could send her kidneys into overdrive. And worse, they had done it quietly under the disguise of health. That night, she stood at her pantry, looking at her collection of carefully chosen bedtime teas, each one promising detox, digestion, or dreamy sleep. She reached for the box she had once loved and slowly set it aside. Instead, she boiled water and steeped a simple bag of chamomile. No cleanse, no blend, just one single soothing herb. It wasn't just the tea that changed, it was her mindset. She had started reading every label, not with suspicion, but with curiosity. She no longer took the word natural as a guarantee. She trusted her body's reactions more than the claims on the box. And within days, she noticed the difference. There were fewer bathroom interruptions. Her sleep felt deeper, not interrupted by sudden urges. Her dreams returned, soft, strange, beautiful, and for the first time in a long time, she slept all the way through a rainstorm without waking once. When she told Marcy about it during their next walk, her friend stared wide-eyed. "Even herbal tea?" Sylvia nodded. "Especially herbal tea," she said gently. "We just never thought to look." The discovery felt both frustrating and freeing. Frustrating because she had unknowingly sabotaged herself, but freeing because now she could choose better. She wasn't helpless. She wasn't at the mercy of her age or her bladder, just a little wiser, a little more awake, ironically from finally getting some sleep. By now, Sylvia had begun to sleep more soundly. Her water was timed with care, her tea was gentle and harmless, and her bladder had stopped waking her like clockwork. But there was still one puzzle piece that hadn't quite fallen into place. Some nights were perfect, others restless, fragmented, no tea, no late drinks, no clear reason. Then, one evening as she was slipping off her socks, she noticed something she hadn't really paid attention to before. Her ankles looked swollen, not dramatically, not painfully, just puffy like they'd been filled with water. She pressed her finger gently into the skin, and the indentation stayed for a moment too long. It reminded her of the old days, when she used to press into bread dough to check if it had risen. A soft pit, a quiet signal, but of what? That next morning, she brought it up during her check-in call with Dr. Hess. He didn't seem surprised. "You've been sitting more in the afternoons, haven't you?" he asked. Sylvia nodded. "I've been reading a lot lately. I find myself still in the same chair for hours." He explained how fluid builds up in the lower limbs during the day, especially in older adults. It's gravity, plain and simple. And when you lie down at night, that fluid redistributes, returning to the bloodstream, passing through the kidneys, and yes, ending up in the bladder. "The problem might not start in your bladder, Sylvia," he said. "It might start in your legs." Sylvia stared down at her ankles, suddenly seeing them differently. Not as aging parts of her body, but as messengers. Her body had been trying to handle a daily flood, and it needed help. Dr. Hess suggested something simple. Each evening, before dinner, lie down and elevate your legs. Just 30 minutes. Let gravity help before it becomes your enemy at night. And if she wanted to go further, he recommended compression socks. The modern kind, soft and breathable. Nothing like the stiff, medical-looking ones she'd imagined. That evening, Sylvia lay on the couch with a pillow under her calves and watched the sky change colors outside her window. It felt indulgent at first, like she was wasting time. But the feeling passed, replaced by a strange peace. Her legs tingled slightly, the pressure lifted, and for the first time in days, she didn't feel so heavy. She began doing it every night, legs up at 6:30, feet over heart level. She even ordered a pair of rose-colored compression socks online, just to see. They were surprisingly easy to wear and even easier to forget once they were on. Within a week, the swelling had eased, and so had the nighttime bathroom trips. Sylvia didn't tell anyone about her ankles, not her daughter, not Marcy. It wasn't shame this time, it was just personal. A quiet victory she held close, because it wasn't just about ankles. It was about learning to see the whole body, not just the symptom, and recognizing that the body whispers before it screams. You just have to know where to look and listen. The morning it all came together, Sylvia didn't even realize it at first. The sun filtered through her curtains just like any other day, warming the edge of the bed. The birds outside chirped their usual songs, but something felt different. She turned her head slowly and glanced at the clock. 6:42 a.m. Her eyes widened. She hadn't woken up once during the night. No 2 a.m. shuffle to the bathroom, no staring at the ceiling, waiting to drift off again, no tepid water from the nightstand or fumbling for her slippers. Just sleep, deep, undisturbed, whole. It took a moment for her to truly believe it. She sat up, waiting for the usual ache behind her eyes or the fog in her brain. But there was nothing, just clarity and silence. Downstairs, she brewed her coffee and stood by the window, her favorite blue mug warming her hands. She watched a young couple walk past with their dog, laughing at something too far away for her to hear. She smiled, not just at them, but at herself. Not long ago, she couldn't imagine feeling this clear-headed before noon. Now she stood there barefoot, steady, calm, and awake, truly awake. Later that week, her daughter came to visit. As they sat together on the porch, Sylvia mentioned it casually. "I've been sleeping through the night again." Her daughter's eyes lit up. "Really? Mom, that's amazing. What changed?" Sylvia thought for a moment, then said, "Everything, but also, not much." She explained the water timing, the salt balance, the bladder retraining, the T-swap, the leg elevation. None of it was revolutionary, just small shifts, gentle adjustments. But it wasn't just the habits, she added softly. It was realizing that my body wasn't broken. It just needed me to listen. Her daughter looked at her, not with pity or concern, but admiration. "You're like a detective," she said, squeezing Sylvia's hand. "You figured out the mystery." That night, Sylvia wrote a line in her notebook, not a water tally this time, but a sentence. "Sleep returned when I stopped trying to fix myself and started learning myself." It wasn't about perfection. Some nights were still restless, some mornings came too early, but now she understood why. And in that understanding, she found peace. The bathroom light no longer flicked on in the middle of the night. The hallway remained dark and quiet. Her slippers stayed where she left them, and most importantly, so did she, in bed, asleep, resting the way every soul deserves to. Sylvia had reclaimed something deeper than sleep. She had reclaimed trust in her body, clarity in her mind, and the kind of confidence that only comes from navigating something difficult and coming out whole on the other side. She hadn't fought her aging body, she had partnered with it, and in doing so, she taught it a new rhythm. One built not on fear or frustration, but on respect, softness, and slow, steady change. Sylvia's journey began in the quiet hours of the night, restless, foggy, and filled with frustration. What seemed like just another part of aging slowly unraveled into a deeper understanding of her own body. At first, she believed the problem was simple. Drink more water, avoid salt, go to bed early. But night after night, the solution escaped her. It wasn't until she stepped back and truly listened to her doctor, to her body, and to the rhythm of her days that something shifted. The first transformation was subtle but powerful, learning when to hydrate, not just how much. By front-loading her water and gently reintroducing natural salt, Sylvia gave her body a fighting chance to hold on to the nourishment it needed without punishing her bladder at night. The second was even more personal, realizing that not every urge was urgent. Her mind had formed habits, and through patience and awareness, she began to retrain her brain and reclaim her sleep. These changes weren't drastic. They didn't come from medications or fancy devices. They came from quiet, thoughtful choices, small acts of self-care that added up to something life-changing. So if you find yourself waking in the middle of the night, staring at the dark ceiling and wondering what's wrong, maybe the answer isn't to push harder, but to listen more gently to your thirst, your timing, your patterns, and your peace. Because restful sleep is not a gift reserved for the young, it's a birthright. And with the right rhythm, the right awareness, and the courage to make even the smallest change, you can find your way back to it, just like Sylvia did.